Hello, my name is Louise Newsom, and you're listening to the Trade and Prosper podcast channel, where we share the stories of individuals and businesses that make our communities. We believe in those that are committed to doing well by doing good, using their hands, minds, and hearts to create a better place for us all, and believe that a little sweat and a lot of sharing turns a community into a populace of prosperity. Trade and Prosper is a forum where those like-minded individuals meet to trade ideas, information, goods, and services, as well as building long-lasting relationships that enable them to expand their reach locally and also globally. On this episode, you'll meet Owen Martinetti and Nick Guarino, founders of Naturae, LLC, based in Berlin, New York, a small Hudson Valley town, who, along with their third partner, Max and Freeman, had a passion to make a difference in the world. Naturae focuses on producing the reliable organic CBD oils and processing capabilities for East Coast farmers. I was fortunate to record this podcast while their first batch was being harvested, which they will use to start their own retail company. They believe that a plant as small as hemp can make a big change due to the growing awareness around the health benefits of the CBD oil it produces. So, guys, tell me a little bit about yourselves.
Sure. So Nick and I were both friends from college. We were going to school at Baruch in Manhattan. We met through a mutual friend and then also found out we had a few classes together. And a few months later, we ended up just becoming roommates. And kind of everything stems from that relationship of how we got to where we are now.
So let me just point out, though, that college was like a hot minute ago. Both of you are like 22, 23 years of age.
Yeah, right.
So you've just graduated. I mean, we're sitting right now in your processing plant, which is about 20 minutes away from your farm. What I've just experienced with you guys in the last hour has been mind-blowing. I mean, I can't believe what you've achieved in such a short time. I mean, I just want to ask you a lot of questions about process, getting this approved by the state, arduous process. You mentioned something about a 5-page application that turned into a 20-page submission.
Yeah. Might have went a little bit over the top, but we wanted to make sure we got it done.
Well, you certainly did, right?
Yeah.
I mean, how quick was it that you got approved?
3 weeks for our first license and about a month for a second.
Yeah. So I'm sure all your mentors that are helping you in this process must have been blown away by how quickly you got approved.
Yeah. I mean, everybody was, it was really exciting. The people who we were working with in Oregon couldn't believe it either. It was a thanks to everybody around us, really, though, and like all the resources that we could pull from them and the questions that we could ask daily as we were filling in the applications to be able to form the plan to operate everything. So.
You know, sometimes when you're dealing with the government, any kind of state or government paperwork, they don't always tell you what to put in it.
No, they're not very clear. No, you just kind of have to tailor it to your project and the things that you consider important that they know, really. And
right.
You think that they're going to know, or like, do you think that they're going to like? It's really a lot of guesswork.
Well, especially with something so new, because they're figuring it out themselves. So they're
Exactly.
learning from anyone who's applying, that's who they're learning from too. So congratulations to you on thinking that way. So the money.
Yeah.
You were sharing some interesting stories about that. If you just want to kind of recap with me a little bit on like how you went about getting the money to be able to do this.
Yeah, so first it started with friends and family. And then we didn't raise any money from that. So then the friends of our families were the next targets. They started listening to us. We had a few pitches. We probably did about 6 pitches from those types of people, but nothing was coming to fruition. Our pitch was getting a little bit better. We had a pretty good game plan down.
And I think that was a big part of it, like we were kind of talking about before, that each investor sort of created our pitch for us because they would want something specific and they would want a certain reassurance or some kind of model. Owen was building all of our models, which was fantastic, that would tell them, you know, what if this happened, what if that happened. And so after the first dozen investors or so that we failed to convince, it started to get easier to bring.
And everything kind of turned around. We had this one investor that came in with a large sum of money, which allowed us to start operating on our farm and order our greenhouse. But then after that one investor, we kind of hit a dry zone for a bit. So we had about 25% of our money raised. and we spent about 50% of that already, and it's looking pretty grim. It's looking like we're not going to be able to do our full project.
I mean, the investor who was investing in the land was ready to pull the investment on the land, and cash had just already like at over like $300,000 or $400,000 had left, and we like, what are we going to say to this investor? So it was a good like 60 to 90 days of sweat. It was really surprising as well, because this investor, we would call him and tell him like, we're really worried, should we continue? And he would say, you guys are going to be all right. Don't worry about it. You'll be okay. And we would always just be
like, why is he so calm?
Where is he getting this from? Like,
And it wasn't like he was someone who knew this business.
No. He knew the marijuana business a little bit, but he didn't know the hemp world.
He was just like, no, I believe in you guys. You're going to be all right.
Yeah, so then we have like a few different things happen. We get introduced to an NFL player and a few other guys. We had a private equity company that got interested, and all of a sudden, after that 90-day dry zone, we kind of just raised the rest of the money in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, for you to get an idea, the desperate, like how worried we were at like 60 days, this private equity group that we found, one of our partners, Paul Freeman, we essentially started going, you know how there's those like websites to help startups and you're always like, well, there's no way that they're ever actually, you're going to find something from there. So there was a website like that, and we started submitting our pitch and our project to a few of these equity groups, and this group in California like actually really liked it. We had like a phone call with them, like 45-minute phone call. They liked that we had our financials in order and our operating agreement all in order, and then like within 2 weeks they were in. So
there's so many people starting businesses, all kinds of businesses. I mean, I come across them every day. People who from making jewelry to doing what you're doing and beyond, right? And they're struggling, and how to be sustainable, to figure out sustainability, right? And especially when you're starting off with limited resources.
Right.
I mean, just from this very fast, short time that you've been doing this, but obviously massive learning curve. What are the key takeaways for you guys on what you would share with others when people are coming up to you and saying, I'm thinking of starting a business? What are some of the things I should be thinking about?
I think one is having partners that have skill sets that you don't have is one thing. And then the next part to that is communication. So anytime like a problem has come up with our project, we kind of all group together and discuss the ways to maneuver, how to make it through this obstacle. And I think by doing that, it's been allowing us to pivot in times of crisis, and then pivot when there's a problem that pops up, and we seem to always overcome it once we have like a good line of communication. So I'd say communication's key for most other businesses.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And I mean, these are all like, can be sort of cliche, but they can't be emphasized enough, which is obviously like organization. Like it's so easy whenever if you're dealing with your own bank accounts, it's already hard to keep them in order. But if you're dealing with like a ton of transactions and things, so like being financially organized would be really, really helpful. Then I think the most important thing goes back to what Owen was just saying now, which is finding the right people. So like we didn't know how to grow cannabis, and my family in agriculture didn't know the plant. I mean, we understand generally how agriculture works. So we just constantly use other resources and other people, and we're constantly in communication with them and made sure that they had the skill sets that we needed for that. So it's just trying to be humble, obviously, and having partners, super important.
So when you start a business, who knows who's going to be doing what, right?
Oh yeah, that's still, I mean, it's definitely a big, that would be something I would tell somebody who's starting a business, like getting roles and responsibilities down. It's going to take time, and it's hard to actually do, but until you get into a routine. But I think that's really important, so that things are crystal clear for everybody.
Do you think that's, I mean, I just know from personal experience that sometimes you just got to kind of all be bumping into each other for a little bit, to find your spot,
basically,
right?
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
We know where some people's skill sets are. Some people are better dealing with employees. Some people are better with financials. But I think everybody's going to, during the startup phase, have to wear multiple hats.
A lot, like all the time.
That's right. Yeah. And you were telling me at the farm, I mean, basically all hands on deck. I mean, we went through, we had a conversation about applying for the permits, getting the finances, then it was actually working the land.
Right. Yeah.
Preparing the land to grow and like turning yourselves into farmers.
Oh yeah.
Right. That was the important, a really important part of sort of that sold the investors a lot, was that we're going to be there, and we're going to be there every single day, getting our hands dirty, and learning every single part of the business, like from stripping the plants and how long that takes, doing time trials on it, to actually making
planting the plants
and,
in the fields, to harvesting it. It's definitely a very labor intensive crop to deal with.
So I mean, you're just harvesting your first crop, and you were showing me all the plants, which are so gorgeous.
Yeah.
And
They
smell fantastic. And we were in that barn, and they were all hanging there, drying a bunch of stuff, and just really magical. And so you harvest. We're here in the processing plant. You're showing me the machinery that must have cost a fortune to purchase.
It did.
I can only imagine. Actually, most probably, I want to say the most expensive part.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one was the
That's our biggest
highest
machine. We
ticket.
have 3 other machines that are in the other room.
Right, right. And actually, if you think about, if you were to look forward and think about next year and what you've been learning as you've been sort of doing your thing here, and I'm sure
next year is going to be so much better.
Right, well, of course.
Yeah.
So first year of business, you haven't even like harvested all the way out. You haven't even managed to process. You haven't even sold, right? But imagine all that's done. If you're in your mind's eye and you're thinking of year 2, what would you do differently?
We definitely start harvesting earlier. We ended up getting to harvest early October, so we probably could have got an extra 2-3 weeks in there beforehand. And then maybe changing up our germination method.
Yeah, we would change up germination method. Also, the order in which we did irrigation would probably change a bit, so that it didn't require as much fixing, and it could just kind of stay how it was.
Because year 1, we kind of looked at our project as like the proof of concept for what we want to do. So next year, I think we can kind of amplify the data points that we got from year 1, which we tried 6 different strains the first year, and we also tried 3 different growing styles. So next year, going forward, we're going to be implementing whatever worked best. And we've kind of isolated it down now to what strains are best and what growing method's going to work best for our fields.
Right, and like with the state, this whole initiative has to do with research as well, because I mean, hemp has been illegal for 80 years, so there's almost no research, and that's why so many of the claims on CBD and stuff often get refuted, because we're just now starting to get some of the research. So the state has it under, the whole initiative is under a guise of research, and so with the different data points that we give the state, we'll also, as I was saying, be able to better our crop next year. Like out of the 6 different varietals, there's 3 that had like exceptional CBD content, and 1 that was like far too low.
We'll be profitable the first year, so we're happy.
Well, that's great.
Yeah, thankfully it's such a new market, and the margins are allowing for this kind of learning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that's an interesting thought. Like as this grows, I mean, what do we talk about? Just over 100 hemp farms in New York State.
Right. And the differentiation is like 30 CBD farmers, and the rest of them are fiber and food production farms.
And the majority are a half acre, or like they're just testing it out.
My background has no experience whatsoever in any of these things, and I don't know, Nick, yours either. But it's just been a matter of critical thinking and setting goals and figuring out how to accomplish them. We were saying during our investor meetings is like the things that we don't know, we're going to tell you that we don't know them, and we're going to let you know that, but we're going to go out and find the people that do know that information, and we're going to go retain them and
use their knowledge, basically.
So now how many people do you have working for you?
At the farm during harvesting, we have about 18 people there during 5 days a week.
Permanently, probably like 5 to 6.
5 to 6 to start.
Yeah. And then what about here at the processing plant?
Here is about 4 people to start.
Now, these people that you're hiring have experience in the spots they're in?
On the lab side, yes. Our COO, Dan Hitchcock, he's a partner now. His background's in the pharmaceutical world, and so he was doing third-party lab testing for a pretty large company called Catalent. And so a lot of the equipment in this world is very similar to that in the medical world. So he's came over, and he's being trained now by different companies and our consultants from Oregon to use this specific equipment.
And on that note, like what we were talking about before, what's important for a new business, I think you shouldn't be shy to partner with people, like if it's really worth it, like, and then of letting go of some equity, because if you can make it something really incredible, at least you have a smaller part, but it's of something massive rather than keeping a large portion of nothing. So if the managers of a company like don't emphasize hierarchy so much and really like listen to each other, I think, and communicate, a lot of problems get solved and a lot of things become way bigger.
So can you believe you're doing this?
It's sometimes I forget, like I was like, what are we doing this?
At the beginning especially, we kept joking that we were kind of in a simulation. But to what you were asking, like how do you solve the problems if you don't have like the experience in the fields? Like Owen, I think, has been really good of a leader in that way with our group, and kind of just having this mentality that like you can do anything, literally, as cliche as that sounds, like that you really can do anything. Like if you have Google, you can do it. Like there's no way that you can't do it if you have YouTube and Google.
Oh, well, people did. I think they went to the library.
Yeah.
I know I did. What were you thinking of doing before this even came up? You were at Baruch. So what was your thought?
So my thought was like I was going to start a software company and start to build that out and either fail or succeed at that. And that was kind of my path. I was trying to get into venture capital from school.
So talking about softwares and technology, how important is that in your business infrastructure? Is that something you've built out from the beginning, a system?
So we've really just been doing fundamental stuff with like Microsoft Office, getting all of our data points. We did look into implementing a cannabis software that tracks the seeds to the end of its growth cycle, but nothing's really been made for hemp yet, so nothing scales
to that size.
To the size.
Yeah, because most marijuana operations are like an indoor operation, and so like
2,000 plants, 5,000 plants.
Yeah, in that case, the software is super useful, and I think new software is starting to come out as this gets bigger. But there's not a lot that can scale to 25 acres.
Maybe that's something to think about, Owen.
Oh yeah,
you should be building that as you're doing it.
Maybe next year.
In the lab, there's a ton of technology. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be software, but yeah, I mean the small like Super C extractor that we need to be able to test and gather data on all of the flower that comes in from other farmers. There's just not a ton of like software technology that's been really important.
Right. So what were you going to do, Nick? What was your dream job?
I think I was just going to work for my family business for the agriculture side of business there in Brazil, actually.
So guys, I want to talk a little bit about the concept of community and collaboration and how important that is for any business and especially for a startup.
Yeah, sure.
So you guys are new in this community. So just talk a little bit about how you've embraced the community in your project here.
Sure. Well, over at our farm, to start our first day at the farm, our neighbors came to us and asked us, "What are you guys doing, growing dope?" And had a very like negative approach to us and not very a warm welcoming. But a few months later, things have changed. They understand what we're doing. I mean, their grandkids are now working at our farm over the summer. So it's kind of changed over at the farm. And then over here at our processing center, it was kind of an elaborate process. We had to do 2 board meetings.
Yeah.
No,
I was just gonna say, like, you just have to, like, it depends on your attitude on how you take it too, because a lot of things happened, like going back to the farm as well, like there was 2 pieces of land that were misrepresented, and we had to have like almost like it turned into a legal situation to be able to purchase that land, because we had already planned out our greenhouse and made blueprints and spent money on the greenhouse, and it was infringing on somebody's like 0.07 acres of land. And we realized quickly that like the best way to do it is just have like a really good attitude and go talk to them, because at the end they're just people and they're humans, and like when you send them letters and send things from lawyers, it's going to be very complicated. But if you just show up, and that's what we did in the end, we just showed up, started talking to them, and immediately like met their parents, and they were like, all right, yeah, we'll sell you the piece of land. It's no problem. So
over here in Hoosick Valley, Hoosick Falls, a lot of business has gone away over the years, and so the community seeing a manufacturing business coming here. So the town has been really receptive, and we have a lot of people that are reaching out, a lot of contractors that are doing favors, and a lot of people that are interested in work. So really excited to see what happens. And
the farm definitely wouldn't have survived without the community. Like everybody around. I mean, there were times when we were planting where like we were really on a time crunch, and we'd ask somebody like, we really need some people out here just putting plants in the ground, and like 7 people would show up, So
had too many people at one point.
Yeah, it's really nice.
It's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it's definitely in agriculture as well. Like it's the most difficult part about agriculture is labor. So.
And how do you feel like you were received by the established community, the ones that have been here for a long time?
I would say generally really well.
Yeah, once people find out what we're doing, and there's not the misconceptions gone of that we're growing marijuana, we're accepted really quickly. I
mean, when we were at the board meeting here for Hoosick, I would say Hoosick had a bit more resistance, but I think people are just super curious. Like that's it, they're just really curious. As Owen continued to answer the barrage of questions, kind of like what we were talking about before. I mean, when you look at like the opioid crisis here in the Northeast, almost everyone here is touched by it. Like almost everyone that you talk to has like a cousin, a friend, a best friend, somebody who's died of a heroin overdose. And I mean, CBD really does help with pain management. I've experienced it in my personal life and my family. And so when they realize it's something that's going to really help out the community, and there's just no objection to it. Like, what can you possibly object to? Like, it doesn't get anybody high. It's not harming anybody. It's only doing good.
There's no philosophical argument that says any reason why this should be illegal.
There's also like a ton of propaganda that happened then by companies like DuPont. Like as soon as they realized they could make synthetic fibers, they did not care at all whether people were getting high or not. Like what they cared about for legalization and policy was just lumping in hemp with, since they're both cannabis sativa, and getting it all out so that their synthetic fibers would be profitable.
How beneficial and helpful have institutions like Cornell been to you, and Ag and Market in Albany, and do you utilize their resources? Have you?
Not so much Ag and Markets, but I mean they've been receptive when we had questions regarding testing. Cornell's been super helpful. We had a few of our plants had some kind of fungus on it, and they came out and identified what it was.
Yeah.
And so Dr. Larry Smart's spearheading the project over there, and he's just been very helpful. He's come out to our farm, he took samples of our different strains.
They're doing a really good job. I mean, as best a job as they could be doing, I think. That's actually how we even decided that we were going to be growing CBD. We had a meeting with Dr. Jamie, I can't remember her last name, but she was a professor at Cornell, and she sort of took us through the studies that they had and the margins that were in fiber and the margins that were in an acre of CBD, and it was with her help. So, I mean, yeah, Cornell has been fantastic. And Ag and Markets as well. We asked for our testing to be done, and they came right whenever they said they were going to. I'd say the government's handled this really well.
And what about grants?
Disappointing. They claim to have $5 million available for processors and for farmers of hemp, and we've just had a very difficult time with them, where it's gone everywhere from you were denied because you're a startup to you were denied because X. So that they've just kind of put the wall up and not allowed us to get through. But we did submit 2 30-page applications.
So what do you see happening here over the next 5 years?
A lot of oil being produced.
I mean, do you have projections for growth, for expansion? I mean, have you thought about that yet?
Yeah, this facility, we have the capabilities of doing 4 times what we're going to be doing this year. So that'd be the goal, would be to expand this facility.
What about the land?
Ideally, we wouldn't do a high amount of expansion of our own farming because we already have 25 acres and it's quite a bit to deal with, but we might go to 40 acres.
Yep.
And then just try to get as many farmers into a sort of co-op. That's really the big goal on the growing side, because there's not a ton of processors in the state, and farmers are turning to this crop because they want to start making money with agriculture instead of having to be subsidized. And so it's way easier for them to just turn to hemp.
That's our goal. We'd like to have we already have a few people, we have about a dozen people interested in growing underneath our license for next year. And
they're called affiliate growers.
And we also have one 150,000 foot greenhouse that is growing hemp on
Hydroponics.
Now, does that product need to be under your name once it's produced? Or
It's under our license, and we need to process it, basically.
But if someone was packaging it and putting it into another container, they could put their brand on
They
it?
could, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to offer. So yeah, we're definitely offering white labeling services through one of our partner companies over in Massachusetts. And then here at this
Guarino.
facility, we're going to be doing large-scale oil production of full spectrum and distillate.
So essentially the
Smart.
goal would be to get this facility to like total capacity with our affiliate growers. That's like the 2019 goal.
Yeah.
Be able to have 4 of those machines in here.
That's a very smart plan. So what's the biggest challenge been so far?
So this happened about a few months back when we realized that our original game plan for our processing facility was no longer a viable option.
It's brutal.
We had a 4,000 square foot barn on our property that we were going to retrofit to be our processing facility. And we're pretty deep into the project, and we've been working with the electrical company for 3 months, and they finally tell us a price estimate of about $750,000 just to run electric to the property.
Just to run a few poles, basically.
Yeah, about 20 poles and a new line. And so at this point, we're way into the project. We've raised all of our money, and we've been spending money.
We've spent a lot of money as well, right? Yeah. We've bought the machine.
We
right?
bought the machine. So kind of crisis hit in. We thought about, we kind of started looking at the problem, like maybe we can order some generators and run the operation off a generator.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But once we started doing the numbers on like diesel consumption, it was so expensive.
And environmental destruction, like
Yeah, it's 9,000 square feet.
Yeah.
And so this was, obviously it was existing.
Yeah.
And what was it before?
It was a graphics business. So they did like vinyl wrappings for different companies and on trucks.
And I think whenever digital happened,
Yeah, they
they went out of business. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what it ended up turning from a really bad situation into a beautiful thing because we got a bigger location, went from 4,000 square feet to 9,000 square feet.
We also expected to spend like close to $500,000 or $600,000 on the retrofitting, and this was like 200.
We're just wrapping up construction here, and the machine should be hooked up by the end of next week.
To wrap this up, what did your friends think when you said you were going to do this? Like, what did they say to you at the time, and then what do they say to you now?
Yeah, I see where you're going with that. I mean,
Yeah. So,
I think most everyone was like very skeptical.
yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
Very skeptical.
I wish you all the best. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for your time.
Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining me today on Trade and Prosper. For more information on our organisation and to listen to more podcast episodes, head over to tradeandprosper.com. Also, follow us on social media for the latest news, events, and posts about a business near you.